So I have finished the Witcher 3 expansion pack, Hearts of Stone, and I'm ready to tell you what I thought of it. These are my final thoughts on this great DLC. Now, this is not a review as such. I'm not really a reviewer, and let's face it, if you have not bought the Hearts of Stone DLC at this point, you're probably going to be buying the Witcher 3 Game of the Year edition along with all of the DLC. And if you want to know whether you should do that, you can go and watch my review. Nothing has changed with the coming of this DLC. In fact, I stand by that review even more. Be warned, since writing that review, I have actually become a partner with GOG, who are really pretty strongly related with CD Projekt Red, so I am not actually an unbiased voice on this issue. But even back then I wasn't. I pretty much had a good relationship with CD Projekt Red and I love this game, let's just say that, and you should probably search out some other reviews to back up my words. For the rest of this video, I want to talk about the Hearts of Stone DLC, and it's going to contain spoilers. So again, if you are looking for a review with the thought to buy, go off and watch my review of the game itself. If you're hanging around at this point, I'm going to assume you've either played it yourself or you have watched my playthrough and you're curious as to what I thought of this particular expansion pack. Well, obviously, given the fact that I called it a great DLC, I favour it quite a lot. In fact, that is an understatement. The understatement of the year in many ways. I did not think that CD Projekt Red could outdo the base game. I thought Witcher 3 The Wild Hunt was so good. They were probably at the pinnacle of their storytelling abilities, and as sad as it was all downhill from here on. And they've proven me wrong, because this expansion pack was incredible. I mean, there's not really a lot to the expansion pack outside of the quest. It is a quest mod. It's not mod, it's a quest DLC. It doesn't really add anything new. No new land, no new gameplay really. I mean, there's the rune system, which is interesting, but let's face it, 99% of this DLC is the quest. It's the new storyline that they've added. I call it a quest line. It's several quests. But that does not diminish from how good this DLC is. In fact, it probably highlights how good the quest line was, that I think it was absolutely superb. Possibly the best DLC I've ever played. Maybe even better than Old World Blues for New Vegas, and I loved that, thought that was hilarious. This DLC was incredible. In some ways it was typical Witcher quest material. It obviously took a lot of inspiration from a lot of the mythology in our world. The main character was fairly obviously the devil. This was pretty apparent from the early stages, and a lot of it was, in some way, kind of predictable. But it didn't matter, because they told this old story in a new way, and they told it brilliantly. I just love the writing, I love the cinematography, I love the way it was delivered, I loved the music, and of course I loved the characters. I mean, who doesn't love to hate Gaunter O'Dim? If you think about the original game, Witcher 3, the bad guys, the Wild Hunt, they weren't really an issue from the point of view of character development. They had no personality, they had no real character, you didn't care about them, they were a force to be reckoned with. In many ways, they were as much an act of nature as they were an antagonist. They were just an apocalypse coming. Gaunter O'Dim was so much more. He was the personification of evil, and he was so fascinating. He was so well done. You didn't like him, but you loved the fact that he was there, and you so wanted to beat him. All the way through this game, I wanted to find a way to beat him. He annoyed me, but in the best way. Now compare that to the other main character, Olgierd, who is a character you almost, instead of love to hate, you almost hate to love him, because he is a reprehensible person. He is a seriously flawed and tragic character. He has done some fairly horrific things, and you should hate him. And yet I found myself liking him's perhaps too strong a word, but really feeling for him, because before me was this man who was, well, as I said, he was tragic. He had lost everything in an attempt to provide the perfect life for himself and his wife, who he loved and adored. He had given up everything. He had consigned his brother to death, signed his death warrant. He had pretty much brought ruin to everyone he loved, and he had nothing to live for in a way. He really didn't, which was sort of almost funny, because of course he was desperately trying to never die to avoid paying the price for all this. So not only did he not get anything he wanted, he was cursed to try to live forever almost in this state of tragic, almost torture, to avoid the very real eternal torture that awaited him. And then there was Vladimir, and I think that was one of the high points of this particular questline, the wedding, where Vladimir takes over Geralt, and of course he's pretty much the mirror image of Geralt with regards personality, and he just wants to have fun, and he's charming, he's witty, and of course he does everything that Geralt would probably not do, at least the way I was playing Geralt, not my Geralt. And that was a lot of fun, getting nervous and outraged at the things he was doing with my body was just, well, I really did enjoy that. I have to say I was really sad when the night was over with him. It was sad that he had to go back. I really did feel for him, and that actually made me feel for Olgierd even more. And when I gave Olgierd the news that his brother had had a great night, this was another sign that there was something in Olgierd worthy of liking, and that was the fact that he did seem genuinely happy that his brother had had a good time, even though it brought him one step closer to his doom. And then there was Shani. We had a return of a character from the first game, and indeed a character from the books, and that was brilliantly well done. It wasn't just the fact that she was essential to the quest lines. There was a romance option, but it was complicated and it was deep, and in a way it almost felt tragic in of itself. Of course, I'm playing Geralt, who chose Yennefer, and I'm dallying around on the side with Shani, but there is a side of me that kind of respects and yearns for the normal, stable life that Shani would offer. She seems so very down to earth, so very honest, and so noble, and I loved the way they did that. But what I think brought this expansion pack together wasn't the story, it wasn't the characters. Those were integral parts to this experience, but it was the dialogue and the way it was delivered that really drew it all together and delivered an incredible experience. They got it perfect, in my opinion. They got the dialogue itself right, the delivery right, the camera angles on the different characters. You really could see these subtle shifts in character feelings. I mean, it's a bit of a hot topic at the moment, facial animations, but they nailed it. There were times where I would just see a slight smile appear at the corner of one of the characters' faces, and you got the feeling they were trying to hide that from you. You saw it, but you got the feeling they were trying to hide that from you, and that gave you even more information. That gave you an even better feeling of what was going on. And that's the thing with The Witcher in general, but with this expansion pack. It hit the feelings. It really did. It was just spot on target to get you totally and utterly drawn into this really great story. In the end, It was quite a short DLC. I've probably missed some side quests, but overall, it's not the longest DLC, or at least it's not as long as I might have imagined. I mean, the main game has got easily 200 hours of play in it, and so perhaps I was expecting 30 or 40 hours play in the main quest of this expansion pack. But honestly, I don't think it matters. In fact, I think the timing was perfect. I think the length of this quest was just spot on. It was long enough to draw me in, get me completely and utterly enthralled, but not too long that I began to think, okay, when's this going to end? I mean, it just, from beginning to end, I was completely hooked. The nearest experience I can think of like this in the main game would be the Bloody Barrens quest. This was one of those things where, you know, you'd say, it was just a side quest, but oh my god, what a side quest. Well, this was, you know, just a DLC, but oh my god, what a DLC. This quest, in some ways, was better than the main quest. In some ways, it was an absolute pleasure to play this DLC. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Those are my thoughts. Those are my final thoughts on this DLC. I've probably forgotten something. I completely and utterly loved it. I am so glad I played it. I was never not going to play it, of course. I will be playing Hearts of Stone as well. I really was looking forward to it. But I think in some ways I was looking forward to Blood and Wine more because, of course, I went on that Blood and Wine trip. And I know it's a new land. And new lands are always exciting. And with Hearts of Stone being in the same world, perhaps my expectations were lower, but they shouldn't have been, because whilst there was no new land, there was no new system, no new gameplay really outside of the runes, this quest was just superb. Masterfully done. Have to, you know, once again take my hat off to CD Projekt Red and thank them for an incredible experience.